Hi everyone, welcome to week 10, your final week of your Career Planning for Pharmacy Technicians course. This week we will be looking at the last chapter in your English book. That chapter is chapter 12 and it's all about capitalization and numbers. So knowing how and when to capitalize things is very important when you're writing. Obviously, in some of our word processor type of apps, a lot of that is done for us, but it's not always done for us, especially when it comes to abbreviations, religious references, and things like that. So when it comes to capitalization, make sure that you are familiar with how to do people's names, how to do their titles, and things such as that. People are very sensitive to that type of thing if you don't capitalize that correctly. And then you're also going to be looking at numbers, how and when to write out numbers versus using the actual digits and things like that. And then how to write them with and without words like 10 million. You know, would you write the 10 and then the word million, or do you write it out with all those zeros and, things like that. So that's what you're going to be looking at in chapter 12. And then the final thing that you're going to be looking at in your other book is step 3, which is all about the healthcare reference letter. So it kind of goes through the definition of a healthcare reference letter, how to get one, and a sample one. So really the idea here is that this is part of preparing to leave a job, is to ask for that reference letter. Because you don't want to, you don't necessarily want to have to come back later. Maybe that person's no longer in that position or whatever. So this is what the suggestion is to, before you actually leave that job, ask for a reference letter. They even tell you that a lot of times people will say, hey, just write it yourself and I'll sign it. And so if you're going to do that, or if they ask you to do that, you need to make sure that you know what to put in that reference letter, right? So that's what this is going to kind of go through. What should be in a reference letter? What are some key points that you should include? This is a sample of one. You don't want to make it too big, too wordy, but you want to make sure you hit these high points. And, they list them, A, B, and C. Your abilities, your skills, and your accomplishments. That's your first paragraph. Second paragraph is going to be about your attitude and your character. And then the third paragraph is going to be the actual recommendation and giving information on how to contact the person giving a reference and so on and so forth, so that they can get additional information. So you don't want it to be too lengthy, too wordy, but you want to make sure that it hits all those key points. And then at the end of this particular section, they're going to go through and talk about what happens if you have to leave, due to downsizing or being fired, and what that means. Being laid off or being downsized typically means it's no fault of your own. So you're going to want to look at a couple different things. What are your chances of coming back, getting rehired? Or, do you want to just go out and look for another one? If it's a layoff or downsizing situation, typically you are going to have a much better opportunity to get a letter of reference and things like that. However, if you are in the circumstances where you are fired or terminated, there's a lot of reasons for that. And you're going to have to make sure that those are addressed before you can move on and look for another job within the healthcare field. And then you're going to also have to make some decisions about how do you address those as you look for a new job and things like that. So as you go through this week's material, I also want to remind you that if you're missing anything from any of the previous weeks, now is the time to go back and complete those things. The course will end on Thursday, at the end of the day on Thursday, so that I can post grades on Friday morning. So if for some reason you're not able to meet that deadline, please make sure that you're reaching out to me. But everything except for discussion posts are still open from the previous weeks. So make sure you're taking the time to go in and get those things turned in before the course ends. If you're not sure about something, if you have any problems or questions, as always, please make sure that you're reaching out to me. And thank you so much for being part of my course.